Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, the official podcast of Neo Tokyo.
Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Today, we have two extraordinary gentlemen who are going to tell us about Rektech and all the cool things that they are building. Gentlemen, what's up? How's it going?
Doing good. Love your
Yeah, doing
intro.
well.
We gotta
Yeah,
hire
great
someone
intro.
like you. Jeez.
Thank you very much. And for those who are listening, I like to joke around and be super unprofessional right before we hop on camera and then hit them with the podcast voice so they don't expect it. So that's why you're getting this. Anyways, and of course, alongside of me, as always, the greatest co-host of all time, the judo champion of planet Earth. He would represent us in the Dragon Ball Z Grand Universal Tournament. The greatest co-host of all time, Mr. Cryptoetheus. How are you, sir?
Dude, I'm always stoked to be introduced. They're gonna think you're my mom or something. I always have to like throw a bunch of asterisks in afterwards, like, no. A very junior at judo. God forbid anyone from my gym sees these intros. They're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna fucking kill that kid. So always put in the asterisks there. I'm also feeling a little improperly dressed. I didn't know we were going plain white tees today, but next time we have you guys on, I'll make sure that I am wearing the appropriate clothing. But super stoked on Rektech. We had him on earlier for an AMA. Really enjoyed the conversation. So stoked to get into it today and dive in a bit deeper.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, we're really happy to be here. And yeah, it's funny. And Jordan and I, we do a lot of these, again, meetings with folks all the time, and we are oddly always wearing the same color shirt. I don't know why. It just kind of happens.
Fully
I'm all for it.
synchronized. So I do have a question to really just kick us off here. Is the technology to help people get wrecked or to wreck others or to prevent from being wrecked? What's the situation that we face ourselves with here?
Yeah, that's actually really, I mean, it's a good question. And but I think the thing, and this is actually something that's not, I would say that well known, but RecTech actually stands for recreational tech.
Yeah, like fun, not losing
Fun
all
tech.
your money. Yeah.
But
Wait, losing all your money's not fun? I thought that's what we were doing here in crypto.
I guess there's there is definitely a little bit of masochism that definitely goes into Web3 and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, RecTech stands for recreational tech, but obviously there's like the little bit of a double entendre there. So I think that we kind of made it because it is about kind of like fun technology and having this like, participating in this like kind of fun game show like experience. But at the same time, we still wanted to kind of nod to Web3, hence the kind of REKT inclusion in the brand.
So it's recreational technology. It is very fun. You guys have actually done some really cool stuff that's hit pretty pretty big audiences, and you guys have had a lot of reach. For those of the folks in the audience who are not actually familiar with what you guys have done, maybe give us like a download on the path to joining the greatest crypto podcast of all time with the two greatest co-hosts of all time. Just maybe give us that snapshot of history.
Man, we need to learn to rep ourselves and each other like you guys do here. Like I need a new grandiose intro for Krish and for Rektech.
We're
That is straight
manifesting.
gas.
We're manifesting here, guys. That's what it is.
So we got our start back in 2021. We had raised some seed capital, wanted to do some experiments in the field of like interactive entertainment. Like how do we really push the boundary with what people do for fun and use modern technology to do that. And Squid Game had just come out on Netflix. It was taking the world by storm. Bored Apes were 50 ETH. So we had an idea of like, hey, why don't we make our own version of Squid Game? Like a 5 game elimination style tournament, but online, and then we'll give away NFTs as prizes. So we spent a good chunk of our seed funding on a Bored Ape, and kind of use that as the marketing basically to get people to buy tickets for this. Sold 8,000 tickets, put 60% of those ticket sales into buying more NFTs, which the community actually voted on. So we ended up with $2.5 million in NFTs, mainly because NFTs had surged as we bought them. Bored Apes ended up being, I think, 115 ETH or something like that when we actually distributed the prizes. So yeah, we gave away Neo Tokyo Citizens
I was
and
just
Bored
gonna
Apes
say,
and Doodles, Azukis. Like it was very fun to spend that much money
yeah,
on NFTs.
the Neo Tokyo Citizen, I just looked it up, was the sixth place prize, and it was 17.5 ETH that the Neo Tokyo Citizen was. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
absolutely epic.
And then yeah, ran these games. We, at this point, we're not good at making games, so made very simple games in JavaScript. Um, and games anyone could play. Kind of like Squid Game, right? Like those were very, very simple, like children's games basically. But because you had in the show your life on the line, or in this case, a Bored Ape on the line, it makes them really, really exciting, especially when you're playing against 8,000 other people and Discord is like going off nonstop. So, for example, one of the games we made was called Backstab. It was based on the prisoner's dilemma, and you basically got put into a private chat room with one other player. You didn't know who they were. It was totally anonymous. And then you had 24 hours to talk to them or not talk to them and decide if you were going to work together or screw each other over. And you were incentivized to screw each other over or screw each other over.
What's the
So,
ratio? What was the ratio of backstabbery?
we were surprised. We thought it was going to be a bloodbath. I think over 50% of people ended up collaborating, but there was a good amount of people that utilized the strategy of just pretending that they were AFK and not ever saying anything in the chat. So the person would think like, oh, they're busy or something like that. And then they would go to backstab them. And then that person that was pretending to be AFK would choose the safe route, which is hide, which was like a foil against getting backstabbed. So a lot of hijinks that went on in that game.
Sounds like we had some scared defensive, passive aggressive players there. Maybe that says something about crypto Web3 people.
Yeah, it was a really kind of crazy experience, right? Like all these different types of games that we built. And again, I think one of the beautiful things about the games, because they were so simple, it really did give the community the opportunity to kind of co-create the experience, right? So there was all these different types of kind of moments, like teams formed naturally. People kind of created third-party discords. You had people collaborating from, all like didn't know each other's names, and then they're working together trying to kind of figure out what to do. We had people just like actively, like just in plain sight, like collaborating on GitHub repos, trying to hack us. Like it was a very interesting time. And I think that again, something that we oftentimes say about Web3 and in particular is that like it's a very kind of small space, but it's global. And so, for us, I think the opportunity to kind of cater to a global audience in a way, and I think that was a really kind of big part of the secret sauce of what made Internet Game really great, was it was these super simple games. Each game was open for 24 hours. Each game, again, if you wanted to spend 8 hours in the Discord, you could, but each game really only took 5 minutes to play. And so, it allowed for this accessibility that you don't really see with any other kind of quote unquote game.
Yeah, and on the topic of like the simpler games, I think with just recently Grok's update, you can really produce some of these, very simple yet fun games. You can sort of our project manager Firestorm made a fun one with like the JD Vance head that's going around. So have you guys been looking into that to offload some of the dev work on some of the simpler games?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's been a big aha moment for me in particular in last December, like coding something in 3 hours and be like, holy crap, like we can make more stuff. At the same time, games themselves are particularly difficult to make with vibe coding. I mean, there's a lot of cool ones you're seeing shared on Twitter. But for us, our games need to be uncheatable. And
Mm.
mo like 99% of the games you're seeing on there are all client side, so you could just like hack it very, very easily, and all of a sudden you're in first place with 1 trillion points. And then even if you go the extra mile and use like server authoritative anti-cheat technology, which again no one is doing with vibe coding because it's hard. Um, Even then, someone like one of our players, our sophisticated players, or a dev could easily create a robot that plays that game far better than you as a human could ever play. So that's why our games are always a good mixture of luck and skill, because that's really the only way to make it so that anyone can win, and also bots are not going to destroy everybody else and win the prizes every single time.
Yeah, so maybe it's actually more useful on the flip side to probe for vulnerabilities and have like either like Grok or Claude or ChatGPT take a crack at it and be like, hey, you're extremely incentivized to break this game. What are some of the ways that you can break it?
Hmm. Yeah. And we're definitely excited by the idea of having AI in a game and like being a player. Like that's really exciting. We really haven't seen people doing that very much. Like one simple game example that we made last year was just AI 20 questions. You know, like the classic child's game 20 questions. There's a word you have to guess what it is by asking yes or no questions. But it's actually AI that's, replying and telling you yes or no. So yeah, excited about the future of gaming for sure.
Yeah, and it definitely does lend itself to the kind of games that we make. I think that like that's also like again, I even think about the folks that are probably, even joining this podcast, right? Like the word gaming, obviously, I think in a lot of ways, specifically even in Web3 more so, you think about all the stuff that like Wolves DAO covers and things like that. Like it's like the, AAA dude with the headset on, quick twitch, first person shooter, MOBA, like all that kind of stuff. But, I think games like it's such a broad category, right? Like, and sometimes we even have to remind people that like Words with Friends is a game, Wordle is a game, Settlers of Catan is a game, like Monopoly Go is a game. So like, for us, you think about the spectrum of gaming and like where we really want to live. We want to live in like casual, accessible, like quick, fun, as opposed to like the hardcore AAA title.
Yeah, I
It's
think one.
interesting. Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead.
Ben. I was just a last thought on the AI gaming side. I think one super fun game that might be able to work in well on the platform is Spot the AI. Like there's all those games that have either, I mean, everyone had a different term for it when they played it in the classroom. I think the one that probably like made the most money from it was like Secret Hitler, where you try and be like, okay, who's the guy, who's the villain in this? But
Mm.
now that AI and the Turing test is becoming like very realistic, it'd be very fun to have like just a bunch of human players and everyone trying to prove they're human and have an AI in there and see how the AI proves it's human, and whoever can spot that sort of AI first confidently with some sort of like, you can't have unlimited sort of like checks could be a fun one to work in.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Yeah, super cool idea.
Ben, I'll let you hop in there.
Just a quick question on proving humanity. What interfaces would you have in that game? Because like if you know what people look like, you could just have them upload selfies and then insta prove that they're real. But
Yeah,
you'd
it
have
would
to kind of know
be
the people.
I think you would have text option, like they would be, you wouldn't have voice, so all the communication would have to be through text. Maybe one of it would be you'd have an input, like a little paint that opened up on your screen, and you could try and draw something that makes you prove that you're human, or answering some like you could ask probing questions to try and like get it to trip up and prove that it's an AI or suspect. Like how did you meet your wife? Are you single? Like all of these just like regular human questions, I think we're in this sweet spot where in 10 years from now, this game might be impossible because the AI is so sophisticated. But right now, like it still makes little like clunky mistakes every once in a while, and it just be probing it to sort of make a mistake.
Interesting. I like that a lot. To jump back to a previous thing, just for a second, I would love to get you guys' reaction to this, talking about like the casual versus the hyper AAA stuff. As of the last statistics that I've read, which is pretty recently, about 60%, 60% of the internet connected world plays games. And that includes a spectrum of your soccer moms on Candy Crush and your hardcore, hyper opposite of casual, PC gamers with the RTX Infinities. So, like, maybe we could just get a reaction from you guys on that. And how does that play into everything we're talking about?
Yeah, that's a big th a part of our original thesis is, we were gamers when we were younger. I played a ton of Halo and Tony Hawk Pro Skater and N64 was my steez. Like, but now that I'm 34 and running a company, like I don't have time to put 100 hours into Fortnite to get good enough to actually enjoy that. I know that game's incredible. Like I know it'd be so fun. Just don't have the time for it. And in the meantime, I don't really feel like getting my ass beat by 13-year-olds for a long period of time. Right? But I still want to have fun. So yeah, that was a big thing for us is, yeah, how can we kind of build things that are a little bit in between the mobile experience, right? The very captivating but often very lonely and solo mobile experience of like the person playing Candy Crush by themselves on the subway. And then the on the AAA side, like those are incredible games and they're super social, right? Like you're actually playing with other people, you're talking, people make friends on there. Psychologists have now shown that there's proven positive effects of playing games like that that are social. So that was our thing is like, how do we make these games in the middle that are really simple and easy and accessible and also hyper social? So yeah, Christian, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, it just, I completely agree in a lot of ways where, like, I remember growing up, I was a big Diablo 2 guy, Diablo 2, the Lord of Destruction, and I was, staying up all night, right? Like, just, dungeon crawling and getting the best items and all that kind of stuff. And then I remembered, I think Diablo 4 or 5 came out. I can't remember which one it was. Diablo, whatever, the most recent one. And I downloaded it being like, I'm gonna play. And it's like I play, you just don't have the time to really kind of sink into that unless you're like a deep gamer. So like yeah, for me it's like now even in my personal life, like the apart from the games that we build and kind of have to test because that's our jobs, I play these kind of like like the habbies of the world. Like Archero, I play like probably like an hour a day if I had to guess. But like it's something where I do kind of get that same kind of dungeon crawling like experience, but in a kind of much more like kind of hyper casual way. And I think what Jordan said, like obviously, like there's something to be said about being, again, even as game developers, we are still kind of consumers in our own realm, and there might be the type of games that we personally like, but like as kind of creators, I think the thing that we really are focused on are these like games that will create these like this really kind of deep level of like exhilaration, excitement, anxiety. Something where all you have to do is make this decision. It's super simple. Just make this decision, but you're sweating. Your heart's beating out of your chest because it's this you feel that kind of life or death thing. And I think that's like again what we really kind of pulled from internet game. And I think that's the reason that internet game really did have the response that it did is because it really did give people that high stakes, high pressure experience, but all they have to do is click a button. And so I think like that's the type of stuff that we like to bring um, to the world.
Yeah, and one thing I'd be curious if you guys have thought about is, if you think about shows like Squid Games, obviously that one being fictional, but like Beast Games, Survivor, these are some of the game shows that really, Survivor was the OG, Beast Games recently. But one of those things that all of those shows did very well is in the first couple of rounds, you're like, it's chaos. These are all strangers. Like you don't have this emotional connection to any of these people who are just getting dropped if you think about the first episode of Beast Games. But then by episode like 7, 8, 9 of all these shows, that's not just somebody that got dropped. That's Jordan. I know about Jordan's like backstory. His wife's pulling for him. They have this whole thing about Survivor. So, is there any way to take a digital experience and as the game increases in stakes, giving the audience more of an emotional connection with some of those, finalists in these big games?
Yeah. Yeah, we think about the eventuality, the future of this, like, as the brand gets bigger and we get to do some crazier stuff like Mr. Beast did with Beast Games, which is so awesome. Yeah, I will say like one of our core things is allowing you to be in the hot seat from your home, right? Like we would love to work with Mr. Beast and be like, "Hey, you do in-person YouTube recorded content, TV shows really well. Let us build something that your entire audience can play together." And then, yeah, it would be super cool if that eventually led to so many people being eliminated that you could actually highlight a smaller group of people and have them, maybe transition from a gigantic digital experience to those people flying in person and then being on video. That would be the ultimate.
Yeah, super cool.
And it doesn't even take a lot. Like I always think back to I was a big Halo gamer as well, and we used to restart checkpoints on some of those levels in Halo 2 if our little NPC soldier who was sitting shotgun in the Warthog got killed. So it doesn't take very much to develop like an emotional attachment with a digital character. So I wonder if it's even, as the leaderboard starts to build and you have those top 10 finalists of, either having them do faceless podcasts if they're up to it. That might be a little too deep. But even if you just shoot them, hey, answer these 10 questions, and then that way, either a shoutcaster or just in the lore, you can kind of be like, oh, this is, X, Y, and Z from his X post. Maybe this is someone from Neo Tokyo who does have like a reputation, or Bored Ape Yacht Club. And that way you can get that sort of more audience emotional attachment where even though I'm already out and I know I'm not getting a slice of those prizes, I want to see like, how Ben does because, he's part of my community.
For sure. And I think that like, because I remember like, and now we're kind of cutting ahead here because we haven't really gotten into what Rektech is in too much detail. But like, I remember like one of the first things that we actually did with Rektech was we kind of helped out with the Whisperer event. Um, and that was really interesting because you guys actually utilized the Rektech platform in a way that it's not traditionally used, right? You guys used it in a way where there was this kind of massive tournament that was, I think, over the course of 1 hour, right? Where there's a bunch of games over the course of 1 hour. But then there was that kind of finalist thing where it was a more of a psyops game, and everyone that was participating was on camera and there was actually a lot of people watching it. So, I think that's one of the things that's actually cool about Rektech is that it can be utilized by different communities where there is these existing relationships. Like people do know who Nick is, people do know who Ben is, like because they've been a part of this community for a longer period of time. And then because of that, there is probably a little bit more excitement or familiarity with the people. I think with Web3, I'm just, just kind of playing out because like Jordan and I, especially even as we've run Rektech seasons or even internet game seasons in the past, there definitely are these kind of main characters that start to show up because of how well they do and how they're kind of more regularly at the top of the leaderboard, so on and so forth. So that stuff definitely does happen, but it's funny because we try and get people to like talk about their plan and stuff like that. And like Web3 is like, by definition, just like so anon. People don't like talking on the mic and all that kind of stuff. So just like listen in with like with their mute on and just refuse to talk. So it's a little bit of an uphill battle, but again, I think again, like Jordan was saying, as we broaden. And I think that, for us, we a lot of people talk about like people from Web 2 going into Web 3. We talk about Web 3 going into Web 2. I think that for us, we definitely want to lean more and more into that kind of more social element and people having more of a public persona or identity.
Yeah, isn't that what happened with Whisperer? Is that we did this game called Average Minds for the top 10 or something like that. And Average Minds, you have to choose a number between 1 and 1,000, and then the anonymously, and then they're totaled up. And if you guessed or if you chose a number below the average number, you get that many points. If you chose the average or above, you get 0 points. And you guys went around and had everyone get on the mic to like, talk about their strategy. And I think most people were like, no, I'm not going to say anything. Like
Yeah.
it gives me no advantage, so I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, it's the NFT poker PTSD. But we obviously got into the nitty-gritty a lot during the AMA. We covered the history. We went from sort of like internet games to like Rektech. So I'll definitely drop the link to that in the description so anyone can go back and listen in and get the full history, full detail. But for the lazy people who are not going to click on the link, maybe give a good like overview on like what Rektech is, catch the audience up just in case we have some new listeners who didn't catch that.
Yeah, so Rektech is basically an internet game if we did it right and added a whole bunch of stuff that we wish we had built the first time and like launching at the right time. So this time, instead of kind of one-off events, we've built an entire platform. And as we've mentioned, we've had amazing communities like Neo Tokyo and a bunch of other chains and platforms and NFT communities come on and run games for their own people. And at the same time, we have NFTs that allow people to play our big version of it, which has a daily game. We have seasons with these massive prizes. And then all the while people are playing these, they're earning XP through our points program. And then it gets a level deeper. We're about to launch our PFP collection, which is called the Dreamers. And we have this really, really fun, really exciting thing that we've built into the Dreamers, which is that we have loot boxes. Each loot box has a different cosmetic or an item in it. So like, hair, mouth, eyes, clothes, halos, auras, things like that. And each of those items has a multiplier associated with it based on the rarity of that item. So you can equip like I think there's like 11 different slots in the Dreamer. So the more like pimped out your Dreamer is, the higher your multiplier is, and the multiplier is applied anytime that you earn XP from playing in a game. So let's say you went crazy and you have like a 10x multiplier on your character. And then you got first place in one of our big seasons and got like 1,000 XP, you'd now get 10,000 XP. And to make it even more fun, all of that is attached to the NFT itself and the metadata. So if someone like wants to, I don't know, come in last minute and swipe the dreamer that has the most XP in our points program, they can do that. If you buy it, it comes with it. So we added all these meta games basically on top of the core one, where yeah, you do want to win the Bored Ape or whatever the first prize is in the season, but you also want to get first place so you can get more XP and maximize that multiplier. And all the while you're like having fun opening loot boxes and trying to make your character look cool, which is just fun. Yeah.
Now a word from our sponsors.
What's up, crypto gamers? Shout out to our sponsor, Myria. Myria is revolutionizing Ethereum-based gaming with its powerful L2 scaling solution. Think zero gas fees, instant transactions, free NFT minting, and more. Myria offers a suite of tools that are tailor-built for game development, including game-specific SDKs, a spec'd-out marketplace, Web3 spiked leaderboards, new AI super tools, and more. All this fueled by a fleet of player-run nodes that are a breeze to operate and pump out daily rewards for supporting the ecosystem. Plus, check out Meta Rush, the Battle Royale obstacle runner by Myria Studios, dropping very, very soon.
Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Yeah, we're all about meta games at Neo Tokyo. So even the PFPs themselves are, you can see Ben's here as he's voice only. Like, that's 4 different like sort of like layers, and it's all into the like ranking and stuff. So I think the more you can sort of like work that into like an NFT project, like the better. Plus I love like the fact that it comes with all the history. I mean, you might want to snag a previous winner just because you're like a maxi sort of like fan, and you're like, oh, Ben won with this, particular like dreamer. Like I want to snag that for the lore and for the history. Sort of form like a Thanos gauntlet of all the biggest like dreamers. So all about that. That's very cool.
Yeah, no, it is a really neat thing, right? Because I think that like that was actually something that we did during internet gaming that went really well, was even just like allowing people to trade position ranks, right? So like yeah, you can buy like a particular asset that has a certain amount of XP, but like even during the seasons, right, you could find yourself after game 3 of 4 in second place or in first place, and you could be like, hey, like let me see what I can get for this, right? So like, because maybe I'll screw up in the last game and all of a sudden my rank falls way down. I could just exit right now. And so we already saw that in season 1, where the person that was in season 1 of Rektech, which was last week, I think. Was it last week, Jordan?
Yes. Wow, yeah.
That was
It was
last
last
week.
year,
That was
Crypto time.
yeah, right.
yeah.
That is
No kidding.
crazy. That ended, yeah. So it ended around this time last week. But yeah, the first place pass last week went for $5,000 going into the final game, which was really, really cool, right? And seeing that kind of behavior, if someone's like, I'm just going to buy the first place pass and just try and bring it home.
And they
And
did. So
they did, yeah.
they spent that amount of money, and then they got first place, so they won $30,000 Rolex. That was
Yep.
a good example.
Damn.
Yeah,
Investment.
pretty good.
My bad. And
Now,
then,
or sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
Please.
no.
I was gonna say, particularly like with Rolexes, where the salesman can be like a little bit sweaty about like reselling and stuff like that. How does that get handled? Like when you're putting it up as like a prize pool, is that something that like luxury brands are kind of about because you get the obviously marketing lift? Are they a little tight about that? Would love to get that sort of inside scoop.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think the interesting thing about, I think like timepieces, et cetera, is that you have like obviously there's 2 levels of it, right? So one is, going up to answer a question that you didn't ask, the thing that was really interesting about kind of giving away a Rolex and all that kind of stuff is that like the reason that I think NFTs were such a hit with internet game last season is because so many of them were aspirational, right? The idea of winning a Neo Tokyo Citizen, 17.5 ETH, right? Like I want a Citizen. I can't afford one, but now I can play in this game and have a chance to win one. And I think that when it came to this cycle, you have less of the kind of aspirational value associated with a lot of different NFT projects like you did. So it became a question of like, all right, well, what are we giving away? And the idea of like an aspirational timepiece, right? Like the idea of like, I would love to have a Rolex, but I don't have the money for one, so on and so forth. So now all of a sudden you have the chance to win one. And so The interesting thing is that like, we weren't talking to Rolex. There's all these individuals that effectively are these like kind of timepiece people. And then they have brands and I believe the one that we worked with, unfortunately, I don't recall the name, otherwise I'd show them right now, but um they cater specifically to Web3, right? And so like that's their audience and all that kind of stuff. So they were really excited about being the quote unquote timepiece provider of Rektech. And they were really great in getting us a really beautiful piece for first place.
Now, I really wish there was metadata that came along with that, because that way, if that person did decide that they were like, maybe they're in a country where they're like, holy shit, this could be, years of a salary or something like that. It'd be great if that Rolex had the metadata to know, the next person could scan the QR code or something and be like, oh shit, this actually was prize in Rektech season, whatever. And like, I think that's one of the really like interesting ways that sort of like NFTs and like luxury good markets could like merge in the future.
100%.
Totally.
We try to use on-chain prizes whenever possible. Like fourth place for season one was a base set Charizard card that was on Courtyard. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Courtyard, but yeah, they like use Brinks as a partner to basically put, physical goods into a vault, and then they create an NFT that's tradable, and then you can redeem it if you want to, whenever you want to. So yeah, we're excited to do that with more luxury goods like a Rolex. So you could just trade it in case you don't want to wear it.
I
And then
definitely
yeah,
think there's a lot to be said about like NFT history and documenting interesting things that happen within a game or an ecosystem or like an environment. Like imagine, kind of to just continue on the track we were talking about, like let's say you have the greatest esports champion of all time and they no scope headshot the second greatest esports champion of all time in the finals of that particular game or sport or whatever. Like that goes down in internet history as a badass moment of time. Like that's super cool. It's like, game ball of game 7 of the, NBA finals sort of thing. I think that's seriously untapped.
Yeah, it would be cool to mint that bullet as an NFT or something like that and sell it. Yeah.
Or have the gun. Like give the gun
Yeah,
like let the
totally.
gun grow in power or something. Like that would be really cool. Really,
Hmm.
really cool.
I mean, it's nice to dream about all this kind of stuff because I mean, it's like one of those things where like it's so easy to visualize that you just kind of feel like it's like maybe one day it'll just be because like why not? And I think that like with the power of blockchains and kind of the way that they're moving, it's just like why not just have just a ton of data that's just like and like having provenance just like super easily visible and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's far off. I think it's just like going to become kind of like just the best practice in general, just because again, as long as people want it too, I guess is probably the other item. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I think the want is going to be there for sure. I think you guys like really put your finger on the pulse of, a cool trend that's like happening and Web3 being a good fit for it. I'd love to like pivot a little bit and talk about like once you guys identified the idea, obviously the hard part about a business is putting together the right team to be able to accomplish that idea. So, could you take us a little bit through the process of like how you guys built the team, some lessons learned like along the way?
Yeah, sure. So got lucky with probably the most pivotal hire for building something in Web3, a CTO, someone I'd worked with previously on another Web3 project. We had like been through the ringer together, so there's a lot of trust there. So that was an instant pickup, and then he brought with him his favorite dev from his company. So that was like already a really solid foundation. And then honestly, everyone else has been really piecemeal. I think we've gotten super, super lucky with the team that we found. We used web3.career a lot. Um, building a Web3 company, it's, you want to find people that are interested in Web3 and passionate about that. So yeah, use that site to great success for hiring developers. I think the only person on the team that we hired through really traditional means, like finding them on Dribble, was our UX designer.
Mhm.
And just, found someone that made really pretty stuff that we would like our stuff to look like. Um, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Any,
No, I was gonna say, I mean, I think more esoterically, I think that like, the interesting thing, one is that like when it comes to like this is something that, like, and I'm sure Jordan and I both like, we're both people that people kind of like hit up and be like, yo, I have this business idea. And I think what Nick, you're kind of pointing at is that like, yeah, cool, like plenty of people have had the idea for Uber, right? It's like, can you actually do this? And so, I think even when it comes back to even Jordan and I, right, like one, we've known each other since we were 20, so it's going on, not to age ourselves, but that's going on 15 years, right? So when we got together and started talking about things, the interesting thing about it is that we have very similar like kind of creative taste, but then very different skill sets, right? So Jordan's like a kind of amazing product person, can just see like really kind of creative things. And I can, I don't know, talk until my mouth goes dry, I guess. And, so those two things, you put them together and it can be a really kind of powerful thing. So there is that kind of like division of responsibility. But then I think the other thing that's really important, especially in like kind of like, you're talking like day zero, right? Even before you're at, you know, getting from 0 to 1, a lot of the earliest members of the team were people that like we knew that knew us, that trusted us, like one of my best friends, like Jordan's sister's boyfriend, were like the earliest people part of the team. And the reason is because it's like it's very rare that you can find people that will like be like, hi, nice to meet you, here's this crazy idea, by the way, we're not going to pay you any money because we don't have any money, and can you just work your butt off for us to try and get this thing off the ground. And so, I think that when we do look at the earliest days, there's just so much kind of trust that goes into kind of getting something off the ground. And then once you do that, and I think even when we spoke during the AMA, right, we actually did spend a lot of time talking about venture, raising capital. But like that's once okay, cool, you have some traction, and then that's actually where you can run this hiring process, because these people are looking for a job where they expect a salary, and that is competitive, so on and so forth. And then it's just about being the kind of best organization possible and having a really strong vision, making sure they have a really good fit, for them there. But yeah, the early days are probably the most complicated part, right? Because you're asking for a lot from people that have, with very little to give people. So the trust factor goes a really really long way, especially in the earlier days. But that's really how the culture forms.
Yeah, and starting off with like a dream and then bringing it into reality, the team's an important piece. Would be curious to hear like what was the biggest technical challenge of taking this from like dream to reality?
Kind of a vague answer, but we've rebuilt what we've built like 5 times. It was like there's not really anything like it out there. So there's a lot of experimentation. So a huge amount of the time that we've spent over the last, 3 years or so has been being like, oh, we actually chose the wrong technology stack for this, and it's gonna behoove us to spend, 2 months refactoring. And that's happened like several times. Now we're in a really fantastic place where we've locked the tech stack. Um, but yeah, just when you're building new things, and there's not just a comparable thing out there and a best practice stack, that's definitely taken a lot of time.
Yeah, and I mean, as a non-technical person who has nothing to do with the build, I can tell you that there's just like a lot of like Jordan, our CTO, um, they have like kind of so much grace with the kind of opportunities that kind of come up, because again, everything is like, it's like, all right, cool, part product, part distribution, right? And you're building the product in a vacuum, and you have like a vision of how it's supposed to work. But even again, thinking about the Neo Tokyo event, the Whisper event, like the way that you guys wanted to utilize the Rektech platform was not built. It was not built for like a 1 hour type thing, right? And so there, like Jordan said, there's a lot of like, okay, like can we do this? Like, will this work? And then how do we make it work? And like Jordan said again, it's like there isn't much of a blueprint for what we're building, right? We can't look at, another first person shooter and be like, let's take a look at their UX UI or like how they're going about this. And then just kind of like, we have a really great, you know, thing to follow. It's a lot of uncharted territory for these guys. And frankly, like the distribution product and commercialization team, like I should say, like we don't make it easy on them, because the needs are constantly growing as opportunities show up. But then at the same time, it's like, what are we going to do? Say no to this opportunity? They're like, fine, like let's find a way to make this work, you know? So it is one hand washing the other, and then just a lot of kind of crossing your fingers, I would say. There's a ton of that.
Yeah, sometimes you got to take the tech side and bring it along for the business initiative, kicking and screaming if need be. Sometimes it is hard to take like some of the people from the team and like take them out of just their role and be like, this is the bigger picture. This does suck for you, but this is good for the overall business. Um, Shifting gears a little bit, you guys mentioned, you guys have been homies for 15 years now. What are some of the like drawbacks, like hard pain points of like working with someone who's already like a good friend? You guys obviously have, stakes there being the friendship. What are some of the friction points to going into business with a friend?
I don't think anyone's
Actually, I have an answer for this.
Yeah,
Uh,
go for it.
I'd say, frankly, the only downside about us working together is that we never talk about anything but business.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like there's never like, well, let's have a casual hangout. It always comes back to it. But like
Yeah.
also the fun part. I mean, I highly recommend going into business with friends. I think anyone that says don't do that doesn't maybe hadn't shown or chosen the correct friends before. But having, yeah, that deep trust and really knowing each other and knowing how to communicate, um, yeah, it's been amazing. We've gotten wildly good at dealing with conflict.
Yeah, we have. It is really interesting because I didn't know what the answer would be, but that is true. Like, inevitably we all we do is cut like, yeah, we're like, let's go grab a beer, and then we're just like planning. So like, it's just like everything is very work related. And then the truth is like we literally talk all day, every day. And then so it's like, what are you doing this weekend? It's like not hanging out with you.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
right? But like I think that's one thing. But because I've talked about this before in no one's really asked the question around the conflict component, but like I said, I think with Jordan and I, um, because one is that we've known each other for a really long time, and we've always like we just always thought the same things were cool, right? And I think that's like that was a really important thing is that like that I kind of said it earlier. It's like we have very similar creative taste and like the same things and like we'll nod our heads at the same things. But we have very different skill sets, and so it's like again, like I said, it's like kind of two sides of a coin. Um, and and so I think that has always been really good. And then I think our relationship, generally speaking, right, like was always around like, hey, this is like, look at this cool thing that I found, or like, that's a really interesting business. So like, again, a lot of our relationship, even before we started working together, was really just about kind of like creative work and things that we found cool in the tech and gaming ecosystem. But yeah, no, I mean, it's been I shouldn't be whatever. I'm just gonna say it. Y Combinator, they did this whole experiment where they basically were like, all right, all these people are coming into us with business ideas. Why don't we match really great founders together, like a really great business founder and a really great technical founder together? Because maybe they both came here with kind of shitty ideas, and let's just give them a really awesome idea and have them go work together. Um, I think it was something like it had like a 95% failure rate, like something crazy, right? Where these are rock star founders. And it just didn't work. And the reason is just because, you know, they don't know each other from Jack, right? So as soon as the going gets hard or there's a personality conflict or anything like that, like what do you do? It's like, fuck you, dude. I'm leaving. Like I don't know you. I don't need this. Right. And because we have, I guess, such a kind of strong foundation and deep foundation of knowing each other for 15 years and, I think it made the harder periods that we've had, and it's not like we're way past them. We've just had a very hard period. It makes us a lot more resilient as a team. So it's yeah, it's been a blessing, honestly.
I love that answer. I also want to comment on the idea of being able to like have a relationship with somebody over an extended period of time when you're doing business together. What I found is if both parties express themselves in business a similar amount, it can work. Like, I definitely think a lot of the people who are not in business or are not entrepreneurial or like aren't on the grind or whatever, they just don't they wouldn't understand that phrasing of I express myself through business. That that would be alien to them, and they'd be like, what the fuck did you just say? Like, what are you talking about? But if you get it, you get it. And I think that's probably a very big key to it, because that makes everything else workable, because you know your default is gonna click, because you're gonna work well together. Also, what I've noticed too in my professional relationships, of which my co-host I'm deeply, deeply grateful for. It's been one of the most rewarding friendships of my life, and I'm super grateful for that. I also think humor is a big part of it. Being able to, like, you know, laugh at whatever's going on, find the humor whatever's going on, make fun of ourselves, and like have a good time while we're doing the thing, even if it's difficult, especially if it's difficult. And like also being able to talk about the difficult things and not let them fester. Those are probably some of the like most difficult things to get right, but the most important things to get right from my perspective. I'd also be super curious to hear what Nick says on this topic.
Yeah, one thing that like jumps out to me is, if I think about my early sort of like crypto career versus like the mid or late period, in the early, like there was no one else really in that space that I had to like talk to, no friends in the space. And then you end up evangelizing like crypto and talking about it with all your other friends. And it can actually be more damaging on your family and friend relationships not to have business friends. Because then every time I'm hanging out with my family, I'm talking about how, like, oh, Star Atlas, they're going to have these intergalactic trading routes where people are, and they're like, shut the fuck up. We just want to have a beer. So if you don't have like some good crypto or whatever business you're in, homies, to be able to like bounce ideas off of, like you end up taking that energy and putting it into other conversations where, they might be like, hey, listen, we're not in crypto for a reason. We don't want to hear about these war stories.
Especially if you start with Star Atlas. You're like, oh my God.
Which I would. I have this like distinct memory of sitting on a chairlift with my dad telling him about these intergalactic trading networks that are going to happen so that you have enough fuel to get to this like galaxy. And I'm like, oh my God, what is he thinking? He's like, I don't know if this is the one time my son is not high or if he is high describing this. Like,
How's that game going, by the way? I haven't looked
That's
at
a
it in a long time, you know?
dude, still building. Swagner's like a big friend of the pod. Like their most recent update, we've got like a little section of like Neo Tokyo NT plays. We've done some like coordinated events with Rektech before. Um, and we had a play test with them or some of the community members. They're also working with like some crazy under the lying technology to get as many players as possible into that like shared space. So they're still cooking and they're doing some cool stuff, but I think we're very close to getting like that next update where it's going to be able to be much more like playable in the gamers, like sort of work its way into the gamer zeitgeist. So it still captures my imagination. I just like almost everyone in the space got a crash course in game dev when I started, where I was like, oh yeah, this MMORPG, this will be done by 2022. This, not realizing they're like, yeah, there's a reason why there hasn't been a sequel to Skyrim in 15 fucking years. Like,
Well,
Yeah.
shout out to Swag. Come back on the pod. We love you, buddy.
no
Um,
doubt.
I also want to jump back to what you were saying, Nick, about like having that energy go elsewhere and like being able to talk about business with people. That has been one of the banes of my existence personally, and I really want to get you guys' thoughts on this concept of like personally, if I can't go and dynamically talk about a range of concepts with a conversation partner or a loved one or whatever, and like that includes business for sure, because I'm obsessed. Like I want to talk about business. I love business. To me, it's like a critical part and function of who I am as an individual, and it's just fun. It's like but if somebody is not willing to go there with me, to me that's a red flag, and I'm like, maybe you don't care enough about me to actually be willing to talk about the things I'm super excited about. And it doesn't have to be all the time, And I also need to be willing to talk about the things that they deeply care about. But I think being able to do that with other people, especially because I'm always willing to do that and be interested, not try to be interesting. One, it creates some interesting things because it's like, to me, it's like, okay, well, if you're brilliant with art, and like you love art and I love business, there's an overlap there where we could, some very interesting conversation. The fruits of the seeds of very interesting conversation can be planted if you both put in the effort and are mutually interested in the other person. Well, like, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think you're right on the money. I think that like it really depends on the person. And I think what you're describing is like intellectual curiosity, more than anything. And the way that it kind of expresses itself in really kind of any conversation is like, again, like you said, being interested versus interesting. And I think like that, kind of like you also said, like, there's something I say, which is like business is like water. Even tech is like water, right? You can apply it to anything. It's like health tech, biotech, I don't know, podcast tech. There's just so many different kind of it's like, I guess capitalism, it kind of connects everything. And so, yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to individuals, I think the number one thing that I also really appreciate in, meeting anyone is like, kind of how open are they, how vulnerable are they, to having like a, really kind of honest conversation that is steeped in something that can be interesting from like a more cerebral perspective. And yeah, I mean, because even Ben, I remember our first call that really led to, all of these subsequent conversations. It was this really kind of cool thing where you did show like this like enthusiasm and really just like you were even just like right out the gate, just like um, talking about ideas and things that we could do. Um, and it's that kind of presence that is always, I think, really, really charismatic.
What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I think I've started using the term range for like the number one trait that I look for. I mean, certainly in romantic partners, but also in people that I just spend a lot of time with. It's like the person that, is I don't know, has wears a suit by day, but then like codes at night and goes to Burning Man and tries psychedelics and is nerdy about this. Like, there's a whole lot of people out there that are kind of more of their life is in one of these quadrants, right? And the people that have spread out and are curious about everything, and so they become an individual with massive range. I find those to be the most compelling and interesting people.
Such a good point. And I think those are some of the most irreplaceable people because they I also think like that sort of range and curiosity leads you to develop a wide range of relationships. And if you pull from different spheres of your life, I think you unlock the ability to connect with people in more areas and strengthen those relationships. And so you become more important to more people. And I definitely think a very critical part of general happiness is the depth of relationships. Not the breadth, but the depth of relationships. I think we're touching on something really important here. I think we stumbled into a really interesting place of the conversation, by the way, guys. Let's bookmark this. You know, I hope everybody bookmarks this and really thinks about this deeply because there's a lot here, and we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, there's something about that mojo of like when you get to the last 5 minutes of the pod, that's where always it's like, okay, well, that's when the most interesting like subjects always pop up, and you're like, this is where an AI would be helpful, being like, hey, AI, can you move all four of our calendars? But obviously, as co-founders, you guys are super busy. We want to be respectful of y'all's time. We're going to be infringing on a minute or so. But is there any sort of closing thoughts that you guys have? Anything you want to leave with the audience, either on the Rektech side or personal? Take the opportunity to do so before we wrap up.
Yeah, well,
Chris.
I was gonna say I very much enjoyed this conversation. It's not at all what I thought the topics that we covered and all that kind of stuff were, definitely had a lot of range, and they were really interesting questions. So we do appreciate you guys having us and frankly, just like engaging in the topics that we did cover because these aren't the things that we usually talk about. I will say that I know Rektech is probably a quite different from a lot of the stuff that is probably covered in the Neo Tokyo realm. But I think I will say that I know that we have a lot of Neo Tokyo folks and citizens that are participating in Rektech, and if you aren't, we always say this: it's like can't promise you that you'll win, can't promise you it'll be one of the most fun things you ever do in Web3. So if you'd like to join Rektech, and you like Jordan and I's co-founding story and all that kind of stuff. I always say, we're a good horse to bet on, and you'll have a ton of fun. So just grab one of our assets, and we'd love to see you in our community.
Yeah, can't be that. Yeah, thanks guys for the surprisingly deep and also broad topics conversation. Like, just thoroughly enjoyed this hour. Yeah, it's great.
Well, thank you guys. Really appreciate y'all coming out on a limb, taking a journey with us. I can always tell if there's going to be a good, like a stumper question, because it'll be the only time you hear pauses. And if the person goes off screen to like subtly hit their Nick stick, I'm like, okay, he's thinking that's that's a question. Which
So
by
subtle.
no hate, I threw
He
it
thought he
in
was
like
subtle.
15 minutes in. I'm like, all right, I gotta go. I gotta drop a gear real quick. So I'm all about it. Nicotine, the hidden sponsor of Web3, not so hidden. Ben, so
No.
appreciate being able to co-host with you. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the conversation. And this has been the official Neo Tokyo podcast, Interlinked, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for a rectastic time, guys.
There you go. Get